Podcast Shockwaves. Welcome to the Purge panel. We're here to celebrate the Purge, not the holiday, but the franchise, both on the big screen and where it's heading to the small screen. Let's not waste any time. Let's start bringing out our fabulous guests. First up, I'd like to welcome Lex Scott Davis, who can now be seen in the First Purge. Next up, producer Brad Fuller. And executive producer, Mr. Jason Blum. Executive producer and creator of this fabulous world, James DeMonaco. Now, from the television series, let's meet some of the people that you'll be seeing on screen. Gabriel Chavarria, who plays Miguel. Amanda Warren as Jane. Fiona Dourif, who plays good leader Travis. Let's welcome executive producer and showrunner Thomas Kelly. And director Anthony Hemingway. Welcome all. Now, just a little friendly reminder to share your reactions to what you see and hear on social media and accompany it with the hashtag the First Purge. The Purge TV and hashtag SDCC. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the franchise on the big screen first. Now, James, I'm sure the number one question you've gotten through your journey directing the first three films is, when are we going back to the beginning? When are we going to see the origins of the Purge? Can you just talk a little bit about why now is a good time? Why now is a good time to make that film after election year? Did election year end on such a high note that you were like, no, let's just go back and go back? Yeah.
God, I have no idea. No, I guess it was, I felt election year was the end of a kind of trilogy. It ended with the senator coming in and ending the Purge. That was the final beat of the third film. So when we decided to do a fourth film, it seemed natural. A lot of people always question, listen, the big question I got over the years was, how can any country make the decision to create something so nihilistic as the Purge, as any kind of holiday or anything of the sort. So it seemed natural at some point for us to try to show the origins of it all and how something like this would start. Yeah.
Lex, a question for you. For those who haven't seen The Purge, and damn it, you should see the First Purge. Can you tell us a little bit about who you played in the film?
Absolutely. I played Naya Charms in The First Purge. She is the activist of her community, and she takes care of her brother. So you see her a little bit at home in their relationship, which is awesome. We are able to get to know these characters a little bit before they dive into the night of violence. But ultimately, she wants to protect the community and also just make everyone aware of exactly what this night is about and what the NFFA is doing to us, despite how much monetary gain is involved.
And did you have a favorite entry up to that point before you jumped on board this project?
The second one.
The Purge Anarchy?
Yeah.
How many are fans of the Purge Anarchy? Any fun challenges you had to overcome on this entry? You worked with Gerard McMurray.
Yes. It was challenging just as an actor and who's never been in a horror film before. Actually, this is my first studio feature ever. Still pretty new. Thank you. So it was definitely a challenge for me to just, even learning the stunts and to how to be afraid, so to speak, when you're rehearsing everything. I think there were a couple takes where I was anticipating the action. Like, I think they were like, you're doing it too fast. The audience is going to know that the guy's going to come out with a knife. So it definitely was a learning experience for me, but one of the most valuable experiences.
You crushed it. You did great.
Thank you.
Jason and Brad, what was it about the Purge that drew you guys to the project, and did you anticipate it to become what it became today? I mean, it's such a success and such a world-building franchise.
we were very lucky. Jason brought us the script. At the time it was called Vigilandia. And I think that the thing about the script...
It wasn't called at that time.
Okay, you're right.
But someone changed it. I thought that was a good idea, and it was actually a terrible idea.
Right. But the concept of the movie was undeniable, and we all kind of felt like James had come up with something and created a world that could really sustain for a long time. I don't know that any of us can honestly say today that we thought that there would be 4 movies and a TV show, though, right?
One of the great things about the idea of The Purge, and I don't know if it's the first time there's been a pen like this, but it's very unusual to have a film franchise that's kind of at the peak of its health. Each movie is done a little bit better than its predecessor, and then to go to TV at the same time. And I think that's really an indication that the line between TV and movies is blurry on the business side, but on the creative side, The Purge it's such a rich concept, and I think all of us here were excited to explore how we change and our behavior changes when we're living in a society with this terrible event that happens once a year. And the TV series let us explore that more than the movies.
Can you just talk about your first time meeting DeMonaco and how he sold you on the project? I mean, in terms of how it was, the project came in really early on in Blumhouse's early days, and
I actually met James way before The Purge. We met about 20 years ago, and I'd been chasing him for different ideas. And I called you and said, what do you have? And you sent me the script right out of the blue. And I loved it. I have a special affinity for The Purge as it relates to Blumhouse because we had done Paranormal Activity and then Sinister and then Insidious, and people were like, maybe you guys know something, but The Purge really cemented the company in a terrific way, and it was really the ultimate low-budget, high-concept movie. So I'm very grateful to James, because the whole thing sprung out of his head. And he comes out, he rarely leaves Staten Island. James lives on Staten Island. He rarely leaves and he rarely speaks much. But it's good to have him here speaking and talking. You should do more of it. And he did this amazing thing. He wrote and directed the 3 movies in 3 years, which is pretty unheard of. That's probably why he doesn't come out to talk to people, because he's too busy working. But he's one of the most important filmmakers that we work with at the company on the TV and movie side.
James, take us through the kind of creative process with each of the first 3 entries that you directed, and then obviously the 4th that you wrote. Was there any specific, either world events or personal events that helped spark that kind of guidance as to where to take each story? From Anarchy to Election Year to the very first Purge?
Well, the first Purge was born out of a million different things. There was a road rage incident where my wife said some weird statement about we were in Brooklyn and some guy almost killed us, and she said, I wish we all had one legal one a year. That's cool. But that stayed with me for years, and she's a nice lady, I should say that. She doesn't really mean it.
She reminds James of that a lot, though.
She does, yeah.
She hasn't been paid for the idea.
Exactly. So it started there, then I was living in Paris, and the relationship with violence was different in America, and the news was much different. And then Katrina happened in New Orleans, and the way the government handled that situation. So there were various events that led to Purge 1, and forming that script, and gun control in America. But 2 and 3, 2 was a natural extension actually from the fans' reaction to 1 would have been my exact reaction, which is the concept of the Purge it's quite a big concept, and it promises something large on, you immediately wonder what's happening on the streets of America during this night of lawlessness, but we stayed inside a house. And so some fans, understandably, including myself if I was a fan, would have wondered, well, I'd like to see what happens on the street. So 2 was born of this need to show what's happening in America on the street. So I'm a huge Warriors fan, so it was kind of the Warriors was the inspiration of the 2. And 3, I always wanted to do a political conspiracy thriller for 3, kind of all the president's men kind of thing. And so it was always a political conspiracy thriller on 3, and then that coincided with the election that was going on between Hillary and Donald, so that all kind of came together on that. And then 4 was born from this constant question I would get, again, understandable like 2 was, which was, how would this all come about? How would this begin? So,
can you just talk about that kind of tricky balance between telling an entertaining story and also smuggling any themes that you want to, these kind of political themes? Do you ever find yourself turning in a first draft and going, I was too heavy-handed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, man. Yeah, that's the biggest question we all wrestle with, I think. Brad, Jason, myself, and Sebastian, who's on here, the producer, is, we're trying to get some political ideas, and smuggle is a great word, which is a term I read, a thing about Martin Scorsese said this term in a book I had read called smuggler of cinema, where great directors from the 40s and 50s were bound, they were under contract to make westerns and war movies for the big studios. They didn't want to make these films, but they were under contract to do that. But they would try to smuggle in their own political ideas into these genre picks. And it's kind of what we've been trying to do here with The Purge, is to smuggle in some socio-political ideas about our country into the movies. But we don't want to be heavy-handed. We want them to be entertaining. The genre movies, we're all fans of the genre, so there's always that fine line. Are we being too heavy-handed? We don't want to be preachy. We want people to take what they want from the films and talk about it if they want to be entertained. That's cool too. So we don't want to be heavy-handed at all.
This is questions for Jason, Brad, and James. Can you guys talk about the process of finding the director to do the First Purge? Obviously, James took a step back. Talk about the process and what made Gerard the right man for the entry.
Me?
Yeah, you can do it.
Yeah, okay, sure. Gerard was great. Listen, I wrote a script that takes place in Staten Island, my hometown. Not that you guys know Staten Island. Staten Island's oddly, I hate to use the word segregated, it oddly is. It's very Italian-American on one half, and it's very African-American on the other half, with Irish in between. It's a very strange place in that it's very delineated that way. And I always wanted to write the First Purge on an island, because I think the government would want to contain it. It's an experiment. They want to be able to lock it down. And so we wrote a very African-American story. It was based in the African-American community of Park Hill on Staten Island, and meeting directors. It was never said, oh, we should have an African-American director, but we met Gerard in the process. And he loved the Purge franchise. He saw the metaphor of what he thought the Purge meant to him, which was very personal to him. He grew up in New Orleans. He grew up during Katrina. And he always felt the Purge was a metaphor for the black experience in America. That was what he took from it. We had this great meeting, and I loved his first film. I think Jason and Brad saw his first film, loved it. Great meeting. It's one of those, everything kind of came together nicely.
The first film, Burning Sands, was it's a really powerful film, and there is action in it, but the human interaction in it, you really feel for those characters, and I think that was important to you, right? I mean, and so his film was a great showpiece for what we wanted the movie to be.
Nice. All right, for those of you who caught the First Purge in the theater, stuck around for the credits, you got a little sneak peek at the Purge TV show. The first episode of the Purge television series kicks off on USA Network Tuesday, September 4th. Now, James, you brought a trailer to show off.
I did, guys. So this is a 4-hour, 10-episode TV series. We hope you like it, obviously. It's, I think the trailer you'll watch sets up. We have about 4 or 5 storylines going on at once. It's a lot happening, and we try to dive deeper into what's great about TV and the Purge is that the 10 hours allows us to really dive into a lot of the things we can't do in a movie. We just don't have time. Explaining some of the rules, getting deep into character, why anyone would pick up a gun on this night. So we really get deeper into it, and I think the trailer will show the 4 or 5 separate storylines that we have going. And where it takes place. Oh, story 1 is, yeah. Jason's smarter than me. He keeps me on track. Yeah, it takes place, guys, between 2 and 3.
Today.
It's not.
Looks good.
Again, if you want to talk about that trailer on social media, don't forget to use hashtag #ThePurgeTV and hashtag SDCC. James, just before we cut away to the trailer, you said this takes place between Anarchy and Election Year?
Yeah, between 2 and 3. Yeah,
exactly. Anthony, as a director, how much fun was it to enter into this world? And can you give us a preview of what's to come in episode 1?
Wow. It was a lot of fun. I keep saying loosely that it was like having your own art project and just being the only student in the class and like just anything goes. So it was just a lot of fun, and just to know that what creativity that you could bring to it, and just to know that, anything was possible. We found the ability to really kind of let it tap into where we are right now in the social climate, and I think just looking at trying to capture images and just allow that to be the canvas for the performances that were coming, which are so powerful and strong, was a lot of fun.
Nice. James, how is the Purge television experience going to be different than from what people will see on the big screen? Were you able to kind of play around with either new themes or new visuals? I mean, what were you able to bring to the TV show that will make it?
I think time is the biggest factor.
Yeah.
On a very practical level, we had 10 hours to explore things we couldn't even attempt to do in the movie. So, you know, that gives us the real estate to just get into character more, to get into, we use it's not giving much away, we use a flashback structure, so we're actually to go off Purge for the first time. In the movies, we spend maybe 15 minutes before the Purge begins, and it's on Purge Day usually, that 15 minutes. Here we actually go back 5 years before the Purge, 3 months before the Purge, 2 days before the Purge. So we see society, how this society exists within the Purge landscape, how people act towards each other when something like the Purge exists. Is it a more polite society? We see a lot of questions.
You think twice before you yell at someone.
Yes, you do.
When you have a Purge once a year.
Yeah, exactly. It is a much more polite society. And you know, questions I've been asked over the years: what happens on hospitals on Purge night? What happens in jails? What happens at police stations? We kind of, Tom and I, our showrunner, we kind of get to answer those questions on this a little more. So again, the 10 hours just allows us to go deeper into the world and to explore beyond the one night.
Nice, nice. Gabriel, Amanda, Fiona, do you guys want to go down the line and tell us what characters you play and how you kind of fit into this world?
Sure, absolutely. So I play Miguel Guerrero. He's a U.S. Marine. He's a guy who's got a bit of a hard edge, but is on a noble mission. And he receives his cryptic letter from his sister. So he comes back just before commencement on this particular Purge night, and he's about to embark in this crazy journey to try to find his sister, and because that's the most important thing to him is his family. And we pick up with Miguel at the beginning of the show, right into the madness. So, yeah.
Good afternoon. I play Jane. She's a young workhorse of a woman, determined, passionate, seizes every opportunity, and we open on Purge night with a major dilemma that she's struggling with, which is, you know, she's not receiving the due that she's deserved, or at least that she believes. So a woman who likes to seize her opportunity sees Purge night as one to remedy that situation and hires a Purge assassin.
I play Good Leader Tavis. I am a benevolent, passionate woman of faith who helps my disciples kill themselves on Purge night. It's the most fun I've ever had. I kill teenagers.
Any fun stories from the set from you three at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots.
You ever spend a bunch of time with 16-year-olds? It's really weird if you haven't been around it. I mean, they're great, but it's a whole other thing.
There's can we talk about the gauntlet? Of course we can, right? Yeah, there's American Ninja Warrior of Death thing that happens. And it's pretty fun, it's exciting. I think you guys would be really excited to see that.
There's something that happens, I don't know, in between episodes 2 and 3 that changes things and makes things really interesting for Jane. And she makes a phone call. And I don't know, maybe it's my twisted, sick sense of humor, but I think it's hilarious. And the situation, the stakes are high, it's dire, but I think it's going to be hilarious. We'll see. That's all I can say about that.
Nice. Thomas, can you just talk about, painting on this kind of violent canvas that's set up before you? And do you need to have a knowledge of the films before going into the franchise?
To watch the show, you mean?
Yeah, to watch the show.
No, not at all. I think one of the things when James and I first met was the idea that taking this franchise, which is the most rock-solid premise I think we've ever seen, and sort of limitless ways to explore that. And the beauty of the 10 hours, as James just said, is we just get to do so much more. we get to see how our characters, what is happening to them in their lives outside the purge, that then informs the decisions they make or don't make on the night of the purge. So it's really kind of opens up the franchise in a very cool way. And, you know, a couple other things that are important. I mean, you know, we really want this to be, as violent as it is, an anti-violence message. Like, if we're not careful, very much a cautionary tale. This is what could happen. So it was fun to sort of jump into it and expand it and be able to really dig down on these themes. And I think for someone who's just turning on the TV September 4th, you need no connection to the movies, whatever, to enjoy the show. But I think we really respect the audience for you people who are fans, and that you'll enjoy it too for a lot of reasons. A lot of things that James set up in the franchise, whether it's you know, the triage vans, stuff like that, the various rules, the way things operate. You know, we bring that into the show, but then I think just on a character story basis, we get to just go a lot deeper and broader.
So it doesn't sound like you had to tone down anything either in terms of the violence from film to TV.
You know, I have 4 children, and I cannot believe what you can put on basic cable. I did a basic cable show about 8 years ago, and we couldn't do half this stuff. So no, we haven't done that either. There's literally no one's gone, you can't do that on television. So yeah, there'll be plenty of spills and thrills.
There's a lot of creative ways to kill people, turns
Yeah.
out, in the Purge.
There's also a lot of great ways to decorate yourself to go and kill people. Were there any special favorite masks that freaked you out on set?
Well, you know, I must comment on what we call the Bloody Nuns, and it's an awesome costume that you'll see if you haven't seen it yet. You probably haven't, but there was no accident that there were 3 ex-altar boys in the writers' room. I'll leave you with that.
Arrested Chains, do they have
Yeah.
Arrested Chains? Yeah, they're terrifying.
What do you, just for the group, what do you guys hope the audience gets out of the show, given, you know, the strong social messages that have been coming through the films? I mean, what do you guys hope to impart with the TV series beyond just obviously a big, entertaining, violent romp?
Don't judge a book by its cover. Get to learn it, know it, then whatever the case may be. But like, you know, I think we are in a place where we need to continue just opening up communication even more, getting to know and learn people, realizing that we're more alike and we're different. All those things that I think we're able to beautifully be infused into this narrative.
Yeah, I think, you know, James always stresses, like, we see throughout the series, we see people doing bad things, but we also see a lot of moments of grace where people under duress make the right decision, you know, and stay true to their moral center, which I think is very important for us.
Yeah, I thought there were no good or bad guys in the show. It felt like everybody, they, you know, they do horrible things, but you kind of understood why towards the end of it. It was great. Even me. So you guys,
We'll let the audience judge.
whatever.
James, what I appreciate about the first film, you know, because it was a kind of keyhole look into a much larger universe, is just the little nuances that you added to it, the flowers. Are there little touches like that you're able to reintroduce into the TV show, stuff like that?
We tried to, you know, start new ones. I think Tom and I were very aware of, like, let's start some cool new, like you said, detailed, I don't know what to call it, but Purge traditions. Yeah, exactly. Like on any holiday, that'd be great accoutrement to the holiday and ceremony to the holiday. And, so we tried to find all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we tried to add all those little details. And we also bring back little moments from the movie, if people are watching closely, little like, what do they call them, Easter eggs? Easter eggs, all popping in throughout each episode. Which, Tom, I know you're putting in, which I don't even know about. Sometimes I see them in dailies and editing. So it's fun to find what Tom's putting on set. It's
Our driving principle is, what would JD do? Sometimes we get it right, sometimes it's like, what the hell did you guys do in that show?
Well, we've got another treat for you guys out in the audience. Before we start, don't forget social media, hashtag The Purge TV.
You're really plugging.
Also, if you have any questions, there's a microphone, so step up to the mic for if you have any questions for our panelists. Thomas, do you want to set up the clip that we're about to see?
Yeah, sure. So this is kind of an awesome piece. This is the first killing of the show, which I think is important. Maybe that's a spoiler, I don't know. But you know, the fun thing about working with a director like Anthony you know, I always say writers, we put black ink on a white page. And, you know, we didn't have James who was on in New Orleans, so, you know, Anthony sort of stepped in and became, you know, kind of the hardwired designer of the visual language of the show. And every night, I'd be expecting, like, okay, we're going to tell the story point. And he would always come up with ways, sort of fascinating ways, to visualize the story. And I think he's a true artist when it comes to that. And again, the thing that James stressed is that, you know, the violence, we don't do gore, the movies don't do gore, we certainly don't do gore in the show, but, you know, the violence is important because both as a cautionary tale, but also, you know, for us, it's like, how does it impact our characters and through them our audience? And we really try to frame the violence in that way. We don't, you know, and use it judiciously, use it to build story, use it to define character. And that's, you know, I think the piece will speak for itself, so it's beautifully shot.
Jason, Brad, do you think that there will ever be some TV film crossover where we'll start seeing the characters that were introduced in the feature film cross into maybe future seasons of The Purge?
Well, that would require us to go into a second season and a fifth movie.
Sure.
That's a wonderful idea, Brad. The answer is yes. You should all definitely go see Purge City, which is pretty amazing. What are we calling it?
Purge City. Yeah, activation.
You can get all sorts of fancy gear like I have. But the reason that I'm actually bringing it up beyond the plug is that one of the great things about working on The Purge so long, it's hard to find a tone and a voice for the movies and the series about the absurd nature of The Purge. The Purge is clearly a cautionary tale about this awful tradition. And I think if you go visit Purge City, that will become very clear. So definitely go check it out.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I went by this afternoon. You actually get Purge bucks that allow you to get hats and T-shirts and other cool swag. So definitely check it out. Let's start with some audience Q&A.
I made the mistake of looking backwards before I started talking. Bear with me.
All good. All good.
So this is probably mostly for James. One thing that I find super fascinating about horror as a genre is that there's that kind of line between using it as an avenue to discuss human nature versus going on the other side where it gets just a little bit gratuitous. So working on something like that, how do you handle walking that line?
That's a very good question. We, you know, we're very aware of it. I think being aware of the line is the first thing to navigating it well. So we speak about it often, Brad, Jason, myself. You know, we've chosen, and Tom and I, even with the TV show and the movies with Brad and Jason, is because we're not into gore. We think gore would start sensationalizing the violence. You know, it's depicting the violence as a big thing. It's making it always very scary. I find violence very scary. I find guns scary. So, you know, it's always about depicting it in a way that seems very terrifying, I think, so then it doesn't fall into a place where it's gratuitous or making it into something that's cool. And that's a very fine line to play with. But, yeah, it's something we're so aware of that we have to walk the line specifically, and making it always a cautionary tale. If you watch the movies very specifically, you know, the purgers usually always die, and the people trying to save lives live. So there's a great moral tale, I think, at the center of it. Each movie ends with someone choosing to save a life and not take a life. So we've, you know, in the writing of it, I've been very aware of the moral implications, and you know, it's starting with an incredibly nihilistic concept. I mean, it's one of the darkest concepts, I think, of all time, which is this day of legal murder and crime. So I guess I've always been very aware that I'd like to end with some hope, even in this incredibly dark, you know, this dark landscape, to end with the saving of life, of community, especially in, I think, the First Purge, with Lex's character specifically represented hope and community coming together. And I think the great message of the First Purge is that the government creates the purge, but the people don't show up. I mean, not to give away too much, but if you guys haven't seen it, see it. So there's a great twist in it that it's, you know, the people don't show up for the First Purge, and the government has figured out, they kind of knew this would happen, and they figured out a way to stoke the fire their own way by sending the mercenaries to pretend to be citizens to say the purge is a saleable concept to the rest of the nation. So we try to always infuse a sense of humanity and community and hope within this very dark concept.
Thank you.
Thank you. Listen. So,
Jason Blum, thank you for all of this. Blumhouse Productions has been part of the horror renaissance for the last few years, like you mentioned, Paranormal Activity on. You've been bringing really interesting, innovative horror movies to the country and the world. So as someone with that influence, what are some of your favorite classic horror movies, and where would you like to see and help drive the genre going forward?
My favorite kind of genre filmmaker is Hitchcock, and his movies are my favorite movies. My favorite genre movies, and what I'm excited about going forward is the Purge was kind of the first the first in this generation. There have been horror movies that have had social messages in them for the history of cinema. But the kind of new wave of it really started with The Purge. I feel like The Purge doesn't get enough credit, but The Purge kind of laid the groundwork for Get Out, which the message in Get Out was much clearer, but yay, Jordan Peele. And what I'm most excited about is using genre to put, social message, to get people thinking about the world, and especially because horror typically is for younger people, and I know when I was younger, I wasn't thinking about bigger political issues as much as I should have been. And hopefully, scary movies will always be entertaining, but also come and make people either turn off the TV or leave the cinema kind of scratching their head and thinking about the world at large.
Hi. I'm looking more at, so far the crimes committed in the Purge have been mainly murder. I mean, that's pretty much what's going on. I'm wondering if we're seeing anything more of crimes of opportunity, like ATM guy, for the First Purge.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, if it's a purge, I'm not looking to do harm to anyone, but I sure would like to be part. That's okay.
I guess, is that me? No, it was a great question. We've explored various types of crime. Many have been cut out of the movies. I guess the most visual crimes always last the most, like stand the test of time and make the edit. We've had car stealing. I think it got cut out of Purge 2. We had some car stealing. The ATM moment got into First Purge, which is great. We've had some sexual crimes, which got cut out pretty quickly. Not gonna lie, and very quickly excised from the pieces. So yeah, we've explored other crimes. We at one point, we did, at some point there was a pitch to do a computer theft on Purge night. And we quickly realized that this was not something anyone would want to watch. So. Thank you.
Lex, Amanda, Gabriel, Fiona, obviously you guys are entering into a big world. When you first got the gig, did you have friends who were super stoked? I mean, obviously The Purge has a wide reach, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions on the franchise and are super excited about it. And a lot of people do dress up for Halloween. This thing has become a Halloween event. Can you just talk about the first time you got the news that you were going to be part of this series?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Purge franchise. Just when I heard about it and started slowly telling family, it was a pretty big deal. Again, because it was the first feature I've done, but then everyone's familiar with the night, and everyone's like, "Are you gonna live? We just want to know if you're gonna live." I can't take watching you die. But no, I'm super excited to even be a part of this and on the panels with these artists. You know what I mean? It's the magical world we have. It's outrageous. It's crazy. And I guess what makes it terrifying is that it just seems so real, and I'm excited. I don't know if you guys down at the end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I first heard about it, when I first seen the First Purge, I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was very fresh, very new, something very different. And when I heard about the project, the TV show, I caught up with everything. And two by far to me was my favorite one. And I was excited right off the beginning. And honestly, because my character Miguel, he's a badass. Like he does some really, really crazy stuff in the show. So I was really excited. And then I talked with Tom. Me and Tom spoke, and he got me super amped for it. And then once we landed on set, I think day one was put through the ringer right away, thanks to Anthony. So, but yeah, so I was excited, for sure.
I got the news coming off of a job, and it was a Monday evening, and they called me and let me know that I had it, and I was excited. I was interested, and as far as family and friends, you know, one of I guess the through line was, "Woo, I'm so happy for you. Okay, do you die? Do you survive? No, don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me. You know this is gonna happen in real life, right? Oh my God, oh my God." And it was just, you know. I get the check, it was super cool. It's all good, it's a great job. And then I spoke with Tom, a lot like Gabe. I started to get really excited, and Tom told me how excited Mr. Anthony Hemingway was to work with me, and I've been trying to work with him for over 4 years now. So then I was like, oh my God, just like him. Oh my God, don't tell me. And so it was just all quite first rate, top to bottom, with the people and the writing. That was always really exciting. But just, you know, trying to stay cool with it all was a bit of a challenge in the beginning. But it was exciting. I'm still excited.
She's so excited, she's taking a red eye back to set tonight.
And flying in the set. That's how we roll. It'll be great. It'll be great. It will be.
Perfect, because Jane is very tired of the story.
Super tired.
Do you want to tell the story of when
I honestly did not set up this question to talk about this moment, but from your point of view, it's great.
I mean, I feel like you could tell the story.
Well, we were at a convention, we were at Texas Premiere Weekend, and we had tables side by side. And she had this line, because as you guys know, she's in the Child's Play series. And she had a line going down and around the block and 5 miles away. And then she's like, I have a phone call, I gotta take this phone call. And then she came back and she's like, I'm gonna be in the Purge series. And I was like, no way. It's just a nice coincidence.
We were like 10 feet from each other, and he was like, wait a minute, I'm Blumhouse.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of people, and I was stoked, because the characters, I've been a fan of the Purge forever. I love the genre, and the character is so cool, and I think originally written as a man, and it's like larger than life and passionate. I was just like, I would do anything to get to play this person, and then I got it. And then, like, a day later, I was so
Let's take another question from the audience.
So my question is, you know, other than some kind of narrowly specific spin-off, I don't know who this question is directed at, but now that the franchise has moved to the expanded medium of television, do you think it's going to be impossible to, at some point, come back and make another closed film?
Impossible? No, not impossible. No, I think we've thought of that, and we don't know yet. But I think because what I was saying before, that TV and movies is so blurry now, that there is a possibility that you could have a movie and a TV series, kind of ongoing franchises in both. But we'll see. Who knows? Who knows?
My question is, are there going to be any storylines that revolve around the government officials or the members that are part of the new founding fathers?
Yeah, we have a family, the Stanton family, who are the big representatives of the NFFA. And on the night in our show, they're holding a fundraiser for all the rich sort of fat cats that contribute to the party. So, and by definition, it informs all our storylines, because that's the sort of governing body that's responsible for it.
Next question.
Well, I love all the themes that the Purge goes into, specifically like classism and racism, and I'm wondering what theme or themes are you going to go into deeper with this first season?
I think, TK, I'm jumping. I think with Jane's character specifically, you can speak to this, Jane. Jane's character, Amanda's character.
Using it for tomorrow.
Using it tomorrow, yeah. But Amanda, you should speak to it. I think that's the newest direction the TV show takes.
Yes, we do inevitably, just because of the socio-political climate on the global stage, it's inevitable that we are going to hit on a couple of hot-button current issues. With Jane, we explore what happens in the American workforce, and in her case, in white-collar, finance America. So clearly, there's inherently a meditation on race, class, politics, and gender, which is being introduced. And instead of a lot like not forcing gore down anyone's throats, who we hope will watch the television series, we don't force any sort of ideas or philosophies that anyone may personally believe, but there are sort of things that in the dialogue you just find, and it's just like, did so-and-so's character just say that? Oh, okay, yeah, and so it's very much about just following what's on the page and naturally fleshing out what the human condition is of the moment and the scenes, and you'll find things if you really pay attention to the exchange of dialogue and subtle actions. There's a lot going on that brews and eventually just kind of hits on the screen where it's just like, whoa, that was coming. That was absolutely coming. But yes, we explore different things regarding race, class, and gender.
And, just to add to that, there's other thing we get into that the movies haven't yet is we have a character, Joe, who for us represents, for lack of a better term, the forgotten man. He's a factory worker who did everything right his whole life, showed up on time, paid his dues, paid his taxes, was sort of meticulous in his approach to life and work. And in his backstory, he shows up one day and the gates are locked and it's like, screw you. And I think that's, part of the American story that in Hollywood we have not paid enough attention to. So that's another thing that we dig a little bit deeper on the class angle in the films have.
Thank you, and I also want to thank you guys for the Purge City activation. It was fantastic.
Yes. Good. I sit alone in the 28th Amendment.
Hello.
My question was, are we going to touch into people trying to flee the country and things like that?
That would be avoiding conflict, and that doesn't make for a very interesting story.
Exactly. I always say that's my go-to answer when people say, "What would you do, James, on Purge?" I say, "Go to Canada."
Always.
Oh, we don't do that. No. So sadly, that could be season 2.
Season 2. Thank you for season 2.
Purge goes to Canada.
Hi, this is a question directed toward Jason and James. As an aspiring writer and producer, I was wondering, in terms of creating horror genre that is also woke per se, and talking about issues that relate to everyone, how do you find stories that are outside of the box that aren't super that have been told over and over again, like The Purge or like Get Out and stuff like that?
God, that's a great question. Wow. I guess I watch a lot of news. So I think everything, I think with The Purge specifically, and other stuff I've written actually for Jason, for Jason's company that we hopefully will make in the future, it's just a reflection on what I'm watching on the news. I think a lot of it is just, digesting what's really happening in our country, and then somehow figuring out some metaphor for it within a genre. Because I do believe, people ask me all the time, like, how do you use, you're making a dissertation on violence, it's a metaphor for violence in America, but you're also using violence to sell it. There is a version of The Purge which is not violent, it has no genre to it, and it's just this very dramatic version of my thoughts on violence in America and gun control. And then it shows in one theater, in the Village in Manhattan, and no one sees it. I think what Jason and I tried to do here was show something that was also something that could play on a larger scale, that can also speak to some socio-political issues in America. But that's, for me, it's all from just watching the news over the years. That's where I get a lot of my ideas, and hopefully that's a reflection upon our society. And again, if people want to look at it just as an entertaining piece of a thriller, an action film, or a horror film, it's great, but if they take something from it. And that's what we're always hoping to smuggle some ideas into it, as Ryan said before. And so it's from the news for me. A lot of my ideas come from the news.
Do you watch cable news? Do you watch cable news?
I do.
Doesn't that drive you
crazy? I feel like they're just yelling at you.
Everything drives me crazy, so yeah. I'm the angriest man in America.
Just don't drive it, James.
I'll give you a very different answer to your question. It's a much more on the business side. The company gets a lot of publicity, low budget, big profit, and that's great, and that's certainly one reason that we do low budget movies. But it's not by far not the most important reason. That the company could make big budget movies now. We could make money doing that too. We choose not to, and we choose not to because the reason that I'm so kind of nuts about continuing and always staying in low budget is low budgets allow you to make movies that simply would not get out. The Purge even was around for 2 or 3 years before James made it, and almost everything that we've done wouldn't get made on a normal budget. If The Purge was a $20 million movie, it never would. It's too risky because it's about something that's like it could have been. It's just about something very controversial. But when you do movies for low budgets, you can take chances on things that are that could be controversial or might not be commercial, and that say things about society. And that's why I love low budget. They don't all work. They're not all commercially successful. But one of the tenets of how we choose material is we say, does it feel different? And if you're making $100 million movies, you have to say, does it feel like these 3 other movies? And at our company, we say, if it feels like these 3 other movies, let's not make it. But if you're running a big studio, you have to have movies that feel, you have to have comps. So my answer to you is that low budgets continue to allow us to explore edgy material.
Man in the RoboCop shirt.
I love RoboCop.
RoboCop's got all the social messages.
Right?
Yeah.
I love the satire. Actually, that's one of the things I love about, movies like The Purge. There's all this world building and stuff you see on the side, especially. My question's for James. There's things in the Purge movie, especially like Election Year, that touch on things that could be their own movie, like the idea of murder tourism and basically the general inherent rules inside of The Purge. And the one I was curious about, it played a role in the Election Year, was the one about government officials of level 10 were immune. But in the first Purge, that rule wasn't there at all. So I was curious, was that something you consciously chose not to address the origin of? And is that something you're kind of saving in your pocket for a rainy day to tell later?
It's a good question. I think in the 3, it was to show how the government who created this awful, awful holiday could also manipulate it for their own good. And they changed the rule so that they can make an attack on the senator on that night. So it was all about manipulation, government manipulation, fear-mongering, hate-mongering. So it's my, I was revolutionary since I was 3, my parents told me. So it's my revolutionary spirit to always go against the system. So really that's all it was a government's manipulation of the system that they created, making their own new rules to then, to service their new agenda, which was to kill a senator who wanted to get rid of the Purge.
So there was never like a plan in your mind to like give the origin of that rule? I was just curious about that.
The origin of the rule, I think, was self-protection. The origin of, before they changed it, was like, okay, we created it, but we're immune to it, which is hypocritical. It's quite hypocritical, and so that's really was just self-protection.
All right, thanks a lot.
You got it.
This was a good glimpse into our writer's room.
What's it?
A glimpse into our writer's room. Like, what about this? We're like constitutional scholars without the Constitution.
My question goes out to all the panel members. What personally drew you into The Purge at first? And also, for the TV series, will there be more of a focus on the social commentary and political commentary of The Purge, or more like a survival type aspect? Or will it be kind of both of those all mixed together?
Go ahead, James. I think it's, what drew me to The Purge, I think was was what my wife said, actually. But beyond what she said was, I think it was just I grew up, not to get too personal, but it was always my relationship to violence in the world and what I thought about violence and guns, so that drew me to making this kind of metaphorical vision on violence and whatnot, but I won't go too far with that. But what I think for the TV show, it's a combination exactly what I said. It's both, it's about surviving the night, So on one level, it's completely entertaining. It's a survive the night. It's mass. It's craziness. How do I get through the night? Gabe's character. And then it's also hopefully the socio-political commentary that we're making on society. And again, if people want to take that from it, that's their choice. And again, with Jane's character, with Amanda's character Jane, I think it's the first comment we're making upon gender, sexual harassment in the workplace. So we're trying to go into those new territories with it. Again, I think The Purge allows us, since it's ultimately about people making choices of how to right the wrongs in their lives, it's always about these great moral decisions that we all wrestle with in life, and it becomes immediately topical. So we're trying to balance it all. Does that make sense, TK? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the goal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I have time for one more question.
Hi. I'm not sure if this question refers to, but it was, do you have any big name guest stars that won't be on the TV series this season?
We're sitting next to some big names right now. You know, I believe in the Tom Fontana rule that, you know, stars don't make television, television makes stars. But anyway, that's getting a little outdated, I guess.
All right, let's get one more question.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. My question is, how are crimes that are not found out about until later treated in the Purge world? Like something that's like more white-collar crime, it's like stealing via computer stuff. I know it's not as visually like appealing, but have you guys thought about that? It's like, oh, it happened on Purge night, but they don't find out for 6 months later that someone stole millions of dollars.
We were doing interviews this morning and someone said, what if you stole the rights? We said, what do you mean? They said, what if you like stole the rights to a book and made it into a movie and then release it? I said, you'd have to do that in 12 hours. You'd have to steal the write the script, shoot the thing, and then release it in 12 hours. So maybe this is the second season will do.
Yeah, that's very quick.
Yeah, but if you don't get caught, it doesn't matter, as long as you did your crime on the Purge.
That's how most white crimes nowadays.
That's a good process.
Thank you, man.
All right, as we wrap up, I want to encourage you to go visit Purge City and go get your supplies for Purge night. Give a big round of applause to everybody on the panel.